So today I have one of my best friends with me who I'm going to be interviewing that I'm really excited about. Her name is Minaal, and Minaal is a very good parliamentary debater, and she's been doing this for a while now. So Minaal, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and your interest in parliamentary debates?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Noor.
Of course.
And I'm glad that you think I'm a good debater, especially because you've never seen me debate. So it's very sweet. But honestly, I love parliamentary debating. I got into it completely on accident. Um, but I think it's been one of my favorite things to do throughout the school year because I just really love talking, and the entirety of parliamentary debates is just a lot of talking. It's way different from MUNs because in MUNs you have to speak for a minute, 2 minutes at a time. But the best part about parliamentary debates, in my opinion, is that for a good 8 minutes, you can just be up there and say whatever you want, and it can be silly, it can be serious, and it's just I think there's an element of surprise that comes with like the prompts and it brings you like closer to your teammates as well. And I've gotten really close to some of my friends through parliamentary debating. But yeah, that's why I really enjoy it.
That's a very nice story. Like, I think it's really nice when you just get into stuff kind of out of accident and it just turns out to be something you're really passionate about. So, why don't we start off with you telling the roles of the team members in a parliamentary debate?
Sure. Okay, so a parliamentary debate team can be composed of up to 5 people, and in each round, three of those 5 people can speak. So essentially, we have a first speaker, a second speaker, and a third speaker. So the job of a first speaker is to kind of set the boundaries of the argument, to kind of state the definitions, explain what the topic is, and kind of give an in-depth analysis of what their team will be talking about in regards to the prompt. Um, a second speaker's job is to mostly do rebuttals from the opposition team's first speaker. So whatever the other team goes up and says, the second speaker has their own points developed just to extend on their own first speaker's argument, but they also have rebuttal points for the first speaker of the other team. So they kind of have to do both jobs. And then the third speaker, the last person on the team, has to kind of make a summary of the entire debate and analyze the clashes throughout, like whatever points that have been talked about by both teams. The third speaker kind of tells the judges that, oh, this is why we won these clashes. This is why we are right in these points that we've been refuting and arguing. And then one of either the first speaker or the second speaker has to give one last closing speech, which is shorter than the other speeches. All the speeches are 8 minutes. The last speech, the fourth speech, is 4 minutes. So either the first speaker or the second speaker, they can decide. One of them goes up, and they speak for 4 minutes, kind of as like a closing argument to like go over the whole debate and kind of get the judge to side with them as a closing sentence, basically.
Okay, that's really helpful for I think people getting into debates because a lot of people really enjoy debating and some really like to get into it. Like I used to do a lot of debating, like MUN stuff back in like sixth, seventh grade, which I think you remember. Like we used to have like MUNs hosted by our school and we used to just do that stuff. But I feel like for example, I'm someone who's kind of grown out of it, while a lot of my friends like you have grown into it, even if it was somewhat like by accident. But how about you tell us about how participating in these debates can kind of benefit someone's college application or even personal development?
Yeah, so I think one of the main reasons I had an incentive to get into Parley was because compared to MUNs, they're a lot more uh skill based, and so there's kind of a set group of people that come to these events. The judges are a lot more handpicked, and so it's like a good way to kind of learn more. I do know for a fact that parliamentary debates have kind of the reputation for not being having like the nicest socials or like the best hangout scene, but I do think it's more beneficial for college applications because kind of almost everyone these days has some kind of MUN on their profile and to stand out, party debates is a good way to show that you're well versed in like a huge range of topics.
I think that's a great answer because MUNs are kind of like really oversaturated now, especially on like college applications. Like everyone's doing them. So I think seeing a
Yeah.
different form of debating is kind of refreshing. And it's also I think it's like just more like you said, skill based. I think it's like even more fun. But how about we not talk about why someone might choose parliamentary debating over different forms of debating? Let's like kind of go into the more depth of that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can only speak for myself, having done just two MUNs in my life versus like over at least six or seven debate competitions in the parliamentary style. I prefer party debates because you have a set team that you get to work with, and it's a group of like 3 or 4 people, and that's I think it's the best part because everyone in the competition has access to equal amount of resources, and you depend purely on what you know. And as somebody who has a bunch of like random general knowledge, I get to use that and pull from it compared to MUNs where I have to do a lot of specified research for specific countries or specific relationships certain countries have with each other, and so I don't feel like I'm too well versed in that, and I have to do a lot of research, especially during these competitions happen during school, and so I have to put in extra work when I do an everyman versus parliamentary debate. Once I leave the debate site, I don't really have to do much extra work.
I totally agree with that. Like up till last year, I was in my school's like debating team, and it was fun, but like I just don't think I'm a debating person that much anymore. But I did prefer parliamentary much more over like MUN because again it's more skill based, and I think you get a better like bond with like your team members, and that way you kind of have like a very synced way of working together for different competitions. So I think that's kind of
Yeah.
like an upside of it. But parliamentary debates nonetheless has like a lot of pressure to it because you're given the topic or something just a little bit before you have to present it, and you can't really, I think, use the internet or something. So what strategies do you think would help someone with the pressure, like managing the pressure?
I think the main thing that helps me with the pressure is knowing that in the room it's just you and your team members, one or two judges, maybe three, and then the other team that you're going up against. And if you compare that to other types of debating, like let's say MUNs, where you have a group of at least 50 people in a room and the chairs, and it's you have to go up and you have to speak, and I feel like that's a lot of pressure, and it is really fun to do that as well. You get kind of like a head rush after you know that you made a good point or a good speech. But I think there's a lot less pressure in party debates because you have a smaller audience and you know that it's a longer speech. So even if you make a mistake here and there, it doesn't really matter because it's not going to be put under the microscope, and you can just the person going after you and your team can just fix that mistake in their speech, or you can just quickly cover it up in whatever you're saying because you have so long to speak.
I think that's really good advice because usually people are more tempted, not tempted, but like more intimidated by the 8 minute long speech because you have to talk for so long and have so much information. But the fact that you can still like make some mistakes and have that kind of not affect your whole speech, I think that's a really good angle of looking at it. Considering this, what do you like? How would you advise someone to get into parliamentary debates, or what do you think would be like good advice for them for someone who's just beginning?
Well, when I started, I was super intimidated by it, so I don't blame anyone who's too afraid or feels like it's difficult to speak for 8 minutes. Even in the last competition that I did, even in rounds that we won, I have frozen up. I have sat down 4 minutes into my speech. I have forgotten points. I have messed everything up. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, and that's the best part because you're not doing it in front of a group of 50 people, and it's just your friends and some other people. And after you've been in enough competitions, you get to know the other teams as well. So sometimes you're going up against your friends from rival schools, which is, fun in itself. It's like, friendly competition. So I think that the demeanor of party competitions are a lot less serious, and the 1 hour that you have to practice with your teammates before going up also helps to like calm down any kind of nervousness because as the hour goes on, I always find myself um less intimidated by the speech because I feel more and more confident in myself or my team's ability to say the speech whether or not we win.
I think that's really good advice, especially about like how you can develop your skills with time because I remember back in like seventh grade when quarantine was at its peak, there was this like this is like a very funny anecdote. There was this competition we were doing, and I did it with some other school, like back when we were in the same school, and so it was online, right? I had my camera turned on and everything, and I just froze mid speech, and I couldn't move. No words would come out of my mouth. And the judges were like, you still there? Or that your internet like started making you lag or something. Like I was petrified. So that was something. But I think like because I was very into debates back in like seventh grade, it kind of helped with time. And because it was like online, I think that gave like a different set of anxiety. But I've had this now because first it was just so embarrassing. But moving on, what do you think are some of the key skills that you've developed or seen your friends develop through parliamentary debates?
I think this isn't exactly still is very academic, but I think the main thing that I struggled in before debating was just, not thinking too much about it and just going up and speaking. That kind of thing, I learned to get over it with time and I have more fun, like completely like 3 seconds before I have to speak. I'm just kind of relaxed now. And the best part, I think, you have to, it's kind of a little bit addicting once you get up, even if the speech was horrible you sit down, you have kind of this rush after speaking. I think it's the best feeling in the world. It's so much fun and it makes up for any kind of anxiety you feel before going up. So I think just learning to love speaking and just any like forms of speech has helped me even in my class settings. I'm able to give speeches without thinking twice. And it's helped me with my enunciation, with structuring speeches, and just researching and like dividing the relevant information to be aligned with like the prompt or the argument. All of those things kind of help me refine, like debating has helped me refine those skills.
I think that's amazing. It just helps a lot with like your confidence and like kind of your confidence in yourself that yeah, you're making a point that's valid. You've done the research and you're able to present that. So I think even MUNs to an extent, of course, help with this. So I have another question for you, of course, which is what are some of like the common strategies or techniques that you think you have used that have helped kind of win or, up your level in these debates?
Well, I know for a fact that I usually take the role of the first speaker, and the job of the first speaker is to set kind of the boundaries of define what the argument is going to be about. Because if your proposition, which is that means you're the first person from the first team to speak, that means that you get to create that definition. But if you're first speaker from the opposition team, that means that if you disagree with the other team's definition, you can redefine it. Uh, and so I have really gotten good at kind of writing out my speech in a way where I'm not writing out every individual word because that's an issue that I had before where I wouldn't be able to elaborate on the spot and I would have to write my speech down entirely and it's an 8 minute speech and you only have an hour to prepare and you're a team. So you have to create a whole team's argument. So I've got kind of gotten good at like summarizing my arguments in a way that follows the structure of defining the speech and kind of structuring my arguments based off of argument one, argument two, and I think some other team members, like my second speaker, in the team would have to talk about rebuttals as well. So while the other team is speaking, they're coming up with rebuttals on the spot. And I think that it really helps that while they're speaking, sometimes I'll pass a note to my team member and be like, oh, this is what I think you should say. And then they'll turn it into something on their own. So I think that you should not like stray from teamwork even while the debate is going on because it's really helpful. And and I think if you want to be a third speaker. I think being a third speaker is angels' work because I can never ever figure out how they do it because their entire speech is made on the spot. There's no pre-preparing in the 1 hour that you have. You have to create a whole argument while everyone is speaking, and so you
That's
have to be
scary.
really, really attentive. Yeah, it is. And so you have to pay attention to everything everyone is saying, which I have the privilege of not doing because I'm the first speaker. Once I stop speaking, I can stop paying attention. And so
Hmm.
I think that if you're a third speaker, it's really good to kind of structure and write notes about the debate as it's happening so you don't lose track of that. That's what I've seen some of my team members do.
I think that's some really useful tips. Like I think like your team is kind of your biggest asset going into the debates, depending on which speaker you are. But third speaker, well, that is really scary. Like I also could never do
Yeah.
that. Okay, let's talk about how participating in these party debates can kind of influence one's academic and professional career. And I want to ask you that because you want to go into political science, so it kind of is very definitely a main extracurricular for you, and it's like very in line with your future career choices. So how do you think that on a personal level parliamentary debates have helped influence your career and like professional academic goals?
Yeah, so I think that in the future I would like to go into something in political science or international relations. So I think more than just the actual debating aspect of it, I think the uh, like the social scene at parliamentary debates is really, really helpful because I've learned how to talk to really well-trained judges and how to extract information from them and how to get well-needed feedback from them, which is a skill that I developed from being at these competitions and just like mingling around, making connections with people. I know people from many different schools, and that's really helpful, especially when you're looking for internship opportunities
Yeah,
or
for
just like
sure.
any kind of improvement. When you watch people debate, you also learn from them. And whether it's like, oh, start your speech off with a little joke to um kind of um
Ease the
brighten the
crowd,
mood,
kind of.
or
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or you're asking a judge like how did I structure my speech incorrectly? Like, please give me feedback. And all of that stuff has helped me in like real life, like asking for letters of recommendation or reaching out to teachers. So I think just the scene at parliamentary debates is helpful in itself.
I think that's really nice because, like you said, the networking and the socializing is really helpful because not only do you get to become good friends with people with the same interests as you, but also you get to learn a lot from them. So I think that's something that's just very cool. Let's now talk about some of like the memorable experiences or lessons that you've learned through parliamentary debates. Any funny anecdotes you have?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite ones that I like to recall, it wasn't I wasn't very happy at the time, but now I look back on it kind of fondly. So, we have an hour to prepare before a debate, and we had made it into, if I'm remembering correctly, it was the quarterfinals. And we were going up against a team that has been known to win. They had two of the highest ranked speakers in our competition so far, and my team had just kind of we had been making it through the competition okay enough because the structure of it is essentially the highest ranked team goes against the lowest ranked team until um they kind of get knocked out. And so we were the lowest ranked team at the time, they were the highest ranked team, so we went up against each other knowing that we were going to lose. And so
That
we
is
kind of
quite a
decided to have
setup.
fun with the competition. Yeah, and that's how it works as the it's like more of a knockout situation as the competition becomes more intense. But essentially, I wasn't speaking in this round, my teammate was, but then he ended up kind of freaking out and leaving last minute, and he was like, I'm not doing it, you have to do it. And coming from me, somebody who likes to have my speech written completely before going up, I had to figure out how to scribble my speech, an 8 minute speech, and go up as the first speaker from the proposition, which means I was the first speaker of the first round. Um, and I think that I did not speak for 8 minutes. I think I spoke for maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and the other team was kind of like heckling me with their POIs, which I think I'll explain in a bit. But um, I look back on that fondly is that I was able to do it, and it was funny because the other team was very serious about winning the round, and we were just kind of
Just having
hanging out.
fun, kind
But
of feeling
yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
But I think that I always look back on that fondly because it was like one of the last times I debated, and also the stress in the moment makes for good stories later on.
That's so true. I think if you're a professional yapper, you could just get through the 8 minute speech because you could just make something up if you even if you have like very poor or very less kind of points to talk about, you could just like keep expanding on them. So I think like knowing us
Yeah.
two who are professional yappers, I think that's something we're just made for. Like it comes somewhat naturally to us to just make stuff up on
Yes.
point. But again, could never be a third speaker. That like that's where my professional yapping kind of
Exactly.
ends.
That's too much.
That is too much. The pressure of like, having to listen everything and then actually just, summarizing the points, like, no, too much for me. Okay, I want to discuss something with you based on the story of yours. You were talking about kind of how, they were giving you eyes and stuff. So when there's any conflict internally or externally with another group or conflict amongst your own group, how do you deal with that? So, everything goes kind of smooth sailing.
I think uh something that you have to remember at the end of the day is that it's just a silly speech. It's just a little competition, and that's okay. I know that me and my team have had um lots of instances where we've been up against people who weren't that friendly, or they would like lean forward in their seats and uh kind of pester the judges or interrupt us in speeches, and you kind of just have to sail through it as if nothing's happening because nothing is happening. It's just a speech.
Yeah,
And I think when it comes to internal group conflict, you have to remember that you're on the same team and you don't want to be so put down that your opinions don't get heard. And so it's always nice to put everything up on the whiteboard when you're brainstorming. So you have all everyone's ideas up, and whoever is speaking in that round can make a concoction of those ideas because in the end it's the person who is speaking who has to construct the argument. And so even if the resources in that round, who are the people who aren't speaking, they're just coming with the information, they might have good points. It's important to remember you have to use the points that the speaker in that round can actually properly analyze and articulate. So that's kind of also how we choose the right speaker for which round, depending on who has more of like knowledge
insight
on
or
that
yeah.
particular topic. Yeah.
I think the advice you're giving that it's never that deep is really good because I think that also really helps with the stress of speaking in public. Like, yeah, if you fumble a couple words or if your point didn't get taken, like it's okay because you could just like improve better either with your research or with like personal speaking skills. So I think that's like very insightful for those who are trying to get into debating. Now, my last question for you is what are some of the challenges and also the rewards of participating in parliamentary debates?
I think that some of the challenges for parliamentary debates is because I think we pretty much covered like the stress
Yeah,
aspect of it all. But one of the main things that I always had trouble with is that it's a day-long weekend competition with little to no like reward on the spot because from you're there from mostly like 9 a.m. to
9
sometimes
p.m. or
9
like 6
p.m.
p.m.
It's depending on if you make it. Yeah. So definitely, it's
Very
quite the
hectic.
intense schedule. Yeah, but I will say that they always have really good food stalls. They don't usually have
I like how
fun
you
courses
report as food
because,
stalls.
yeah, I remember I had like 3 Subway cookies one time at one
Oh,
competition.
yeah,
It was
that's quite
very
a
good.
reward.
Yeah, but I think that after my first couple of competitions, I made friends with a lot of the other debaters who would go to the same competitions. So it's always just fun to hang out with your friends. And also, if you make it to like however far into the competition, it's always fun to tell uh your school or other people that you were part of the team that made it, this far.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely a flex because parliamentary debates are no joke. They're very, very competitive and
Exactly.
they're quite daunting too at some points, especially when you're going up against teams that you have years of experience or you're like a very beginner team. So I think really good like advice from you. So that's kind of pretty much all the questions I have for you. I think this is so insightful. Like even for me as someone who did like debates and for other people who are getting into debates because debating is regarded as like a very good extracurricular. And I think this would help out so many of like MYP fours and MIP 4s and 5s who are kind of just like beginning their extracurricular journey. So thank you so much for being interviewed. I had such a great time interviewing you.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I love talking, so I enjoyed this.
We love yapping. So true.